Okay, I'm going to do a couple things today. And kind of like last time we met, I'm going to maybe, I don't know, around 10:40-ish, 45. I'm going to just kind of stop and if you guys have any questions about anything, that'll be the time to do that because I want to go through a couple of things today with you. Um, so we're going to talk. Last time we talked about private practice, we kind of talked more about the kind of picking a site, how people own sites, what that looks like, how much you make, that type thing. I think we talked a little bit about how much you charge, which sometimes depends on the site that you're at. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more today, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about like insurance um, handling, and I'm going to talk about multi-state licensing today a little bit, and then um, I'll probably spend some time talking about a couple of just uh, transition things for everyone that if you're an LPC, this if like this is your last course and you're about to graduate, I'm going to talk about some transition things for everyone that's doing that. If you're an LMFT, this wouldn't apply to you until you're uh, until you're after your Prac III, and then you'll Dr. Johnson will talk about a lot of this too as well. Um, so I'm going to talk about several different things today. Um, and sorry, there we go. Okay. And you can always you can always just put stuff in the chat, like if you have questions as I'm going. I'm going to probably just talk about several things at once, but please don't hesitate to ask questions. One of the reasons why I'm saying put it in the chat, we have a lot of people today, and when we have classes that get fairly big, if we start trying to ask questions, it gets a little confusing. So the chat's really helpful, and then I'll probably just call on you. So it's kind of like class, right? It's kind of the same thing. Or you can put your hand up, with the icon. That's great. You can do that too. And so I'm going to turn the fire hose on now and just like throw out a bunch of stuff. And let me tell you this: we are going to have an elective now, a private practice class that we're going to offer for students, which doesn't help any of you here necessarily. But one of the things that I'm going to try to advocate is that we can let alumni come and take the class too, because it's going to be an elective. It's not like a requirement. It's going to be something that's going to be offered and taught by multiple different people on the in the faculty. And so I've seen the syllabus and it looks really good. I think it's going to be a really good class. Um, and it'll be especially helpful. Like this topic that I'm talking about now, I think it's helpful for all of us to talk about it, but it's kind of like everything else. A lot of the things we're talking about don't necessarily apply to us until we get kind of closer to our full licensure. Because a lot of the things like insurance, for example, right now, um, there is a pathway to charge or be on an insurance panel as an associate, but there's a lot of things that have to happen for that to take place. But when you're a fully licensed provider, it's a lot easier to get on a panel. And so we'll talk about those things too today. Um, the other exciting thing that's happening right now, if you're an LMFT, there is a bill before the House or the Senate, I can't remember in Texas, to allow us to allow associates to take Medicaid, which is a massive deal. I'm going to make an assumption that the LPC folks are included in this bill. I think that it's called House Bill 1517. You can look it up and see. I haven't looked at the actual bill yet. I just saw this yesterday, and I was going to bring it up today. So I think it's one of those things where hopefully, usually what happens is if a lot of times if that passes, then sometimes insurance companies aren't far behind in terms of letting associates be on panels. But we'll kind of see what happens with that. So that's some interesting news that's going on. You can find any of this information out if you join the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Committee um, email list. Like they'll send out emails. I think they're once or twice a month on whatever things are being voted on or whatever things are being discussed or rule changes, all those things. You can kind of see some of the things that are happening. And so, 17, 16, sorry. Yeah. Um, so that's just in Texas right now. So that's kind of interesting. That would actually be a big deal because that would basically open up providers in the Medicaid world, would be kind of open it wide open, which would be really helpful because that's um, very much needed right now. So let's talk a little bit about insurance for a second, and I'm going to give you uh, a couple of things to think about because there's always a question when you first start out, like, okay, should I bill insurance or should I be self-pay? And that's kind of the question that a lot of people wrestle with, and some of that depends on how fast or slow you care about building a practice. Um, for the most part, building a self-pay practice, depending on your fee, takes a little bit longer than building a practice where you take insurance. One of the reasons is because if you're on a panel, which is what they call it, providers are on insurance panels. If you're on a panel, then the insurance company automatically markets you too. Like if someone goes on their insurance and they look for providers, like any of you that have insurance right now, if you went on your insurance webpage and looked up behavioral health or mental health providers, you would see, X amount of people, and there'd be a list of folks, and you could filter through and find someone. That's a massive way that's probably one of the ways that people find providers right now is going through their insurance provider. And so it's kind of like free marketing, basically. If you decide to go the self-pay route, which is totally fine too, it takes a little bit longer because in general, most people want to use their insurance to pay for the service. It's kind of like if you were going to, I'm making up all these numbers. If you were going to pay a copay of $30 and its self-pay rate was $100, most people would say, I'm going to pay 30, and because it just makes financial sense um, for you to do that. However, there are people that don't want to use insurance for mental health, and they will pay the self-pay rate, and that will happen. Um, and it so let's say you get 5 people that come to you, maybe you get one of them that would turn into a client, let's say. Um, and that's why it takes a little bit longer to build your practice. The upside of not being paneled with an insurance provider, there's a couple of upsides to it. One upside would be you're not like under the contract of like you can charge whatever you want. There's no stipulation on what you're reimbursed. You don't fall underneath any type of potential audit from the insurance company, which I've never actually been audited, but like your files could potentially be audited if they want to ask questions. One of the things that started happening with me, and this was about, I don't know, right before COVID, like 2019, I had 2 or 3 clients that I had been seeing through Blue Cross Blue Shield earlier in the year, like February or so. And then in the fall, like September or October, I got a letter from Blue Cross Blue Shield saying, hey, these clients that you were seeing back in February, even though we said they had insurance coverage, actually did not. So we need all that money back. So all the money that they had paid me, they wanted that back. And there's really nothing you can do about it. Like I tried to fight it, but um, so that cost then would be shared with the client. Well, I'd stop seeing those clients. What's the odds of me getting any of that money? Pretty slim. I sent letters and I sent an email, and I think my office admin called a couple of times. But anyway, that could happen too. That's happened with Blue Cross several times. with me. It happened once with United recently, like about a year ago. So those are things that can happen. Um, but if you just do self-pay, then you have a lot more freedom. You can charge, you know, uh, if you want to do um, whatever you want to charge, $100, $150, $80, whatever you want to charge, you can do. There's no stipulation on how much or how little you charge for the service. So that's a pretty big upside. The downside probably is that it just takes you longer to build your clients, um, so that you can, if you kind of want to, if you're in a hurry maybe and you want to kind of build your clientele up, then the insurance path is definitely the right path to go. There's a couple of new things that are out there now that I think are interesting, and I'm actually using one of them. There's a couple of third party companies. The one I use is called Headway, and they basically credential you with several different panels, and then they've pre-negotiated rate reimbursements with those insurance companies. So when you get accepted by Headway, they automatically say, "Hey, here's how much you're going to make," and they'll tell you like your client's going to pay X and you're going to make Y, and you get that every session, and you get paid like twice a month, which is kind of a new. That's like a new. And I think there's Headway, and there's another one. I can't remember the name of it.
Alma?
Alma. Yeah, I get emails from Alma all the time. So the both of them basically work the same. And so they basically reimburse you. You don't go through the insurance company. I'm doing that now because I got tired of going through the insurance company. And Simple Practice was starting to charge me more to file insurance claims. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I got away from that. And so for me, because my clients, my private practice now is very small. So I'm trying to save money. So that works for me. If you have a big practice, some of the charges that like Simple Practice would charge or other ones charge, it might not be as big of a deal because you make enough money to kind of cover that charge. Um, if if you decide to go the insurance route, the process is fairly easy to go through. Everything's online, like with the major ones, especially Blue Cross, United, Aetna, Cigna, and then they also have companies underneath them too. Like United Health has several kind of offshoots, and basically when you start the process, they'll tell you it could take 3 months or something. They'll tell you 90 days or 120 days or whatever it is. A lot of times it doesn't take quite that long, but it's an application process that you go through, and you also create a. I'm going to actually show you this. This will help. I think if I can get this to come up. Uh, You'll also go. Let me bring this up so everyone can see it. This is called CAQH. This is a clearinghouse of all your information, basically that all the insurance providers can see. So when they go to make sure that you actually have the license you have, make sure you have insurance, make sure that you are who you say you are, this is where they go. This is the clearinghouse that they use. So this is kind of one-stop shop for them so they can see it. And so you re-attest to this like twice a year. And you go on here and enter in whatever your information is. Like for example, last time we talked about getting a, a tax identification number, which anyone can get for free. If you're going to be a sole proprietor or if you're going to incorporate, you would get a tax identification number, and you would use that number as an identification through here. If you didn't do that, they make you use your social security number, which I don't recommend. I would recommend anybody can get a tax ID number. They're free. They'll just generate one. They'll give it to you. that identifies you. That's connected to your social security number, but also it's mainly connected to your practice, or whatever practice you have. So you go on here, and it's kind of a long, this is actually kind of a long process. They ask you several different questions. There's several different categories that you kind of have to fill out. But once you do it once, it's actually pretty easy to reattest. I want to say it's every 6 months. It feels like every month, but I'm sure it's not. It just feels that way because they start sending you emails. Hey, it's almost time, that kind of stuff. And so by the time you reattest, this is just basically the way that the insurance companies kind of make sure you are who you say you are, which is kind of interesting because, like with United Health, for example, you have to reattest with them too every 6 months or so, which is kind of weird. But this is where you would go. There's another online. There's another online billing kind of service called Availity that would bill pretty much. You could use this to bill your insurance claims through for everybody except for United. United's not on this one. I'm not sure why. So this is just another place that you can go to do to look at and just kind of create. I don't even use this anymore. I used it for a long time because I think when I first started using this, I feel like Simple Practice wasn't even billing insurance, and then they started, so I used Simple Practice, and most of the software management systems or practice management systems do billing now. Most all of them do, so that's always an option. Um, so Corinne asked a question about Headway. Would they cover my? I don't know that question. I don't know the answer if Headway would cover if insurance came back and said, "Hey, you really owe this." Um, I think they must because they tell you if you're able to see clients through that insurance provider or not. So I haven't had that happen, so that's a great question. Um, I probably you could, but you could probably look that up pretty quickly. And actually, talking with Headway is really easy. They're very quick to answer their messages. They have pretty good customer service. Um, they're at least from, in my experience, I've had a really good experience with them. So okay, cool. So if you start that process, you do all your application, they'll send you updates, and if they need anything else, they'll ask you. When you finally get to this place where it's like, okay, we're going to sign a contract with the insurance provider, that's when you find out how much you're reimbursed. And so they reimburse based on what's called CPT codes. Okay. So CPT codes are notifiers to the insurance company of who's present in the session and what you're doing in the session. So, for example, the CPT code 90837 is an individual for 60 minutes, and you would get reimbursed X amount for that code. 90871 is a diagnostic code where you're doing a diagnostic interview, let's say at the beginning when you start meeting people. 90847 is called family therapy with client present, otherwise known as couples therapy. 90846 is called family therapy without client present, if you do a session with a spouse without the client present. Now, why am I saying it that way? Insurance providers take the medical view of mental health where there's an identified patient. Just like if you go to the doctor's office, you're the identified patient. So if you work with a couple or a family, if you work with more than one person, someone has to be what's called the identified patient that gets the diagnostic. Okay. And you tell your clients, I tell my clients all this information, because no one knows how insurance works. Like when they sign up, they think it's just like magic or something happens, like it's an ATM. It's not how it works. your clients need to know, hey, someone will have a diagnosis and that's how it works. And you kind of go through your spiel. So someone's an identified patient, right? The identified patient gets the code, gets the diagnosis, and only certain diagnosis or diagnostic codes get reimbursed. None of the relational codes get reimbursed. Most all of the F codes get reimbursed. Okay. So for example, like F33.0 is depression, like major depressive disorder. F42.1 is mostly general anxiety disorder. And then there's qualifiers underneath all of those. F 43.0 is adjustment disorder, which is mostly what people use for couples or families, because that is something that is more closely related to relationship therapy, because there's probably some kind of something going on that people are having trouble adjusting to, which is probably true. And there's usually a time frame associated with adjustment disorder. So if you get the identified patient who gets that code, and then the CPT code is the one that they would reimburse, which your insurance provider should be able to say, here's all the CPT codes that are reimbursable. I always have my clients double check that, and I give them the codes to look for and make sure that the insurance provider reimburses that. And I ask them to get that in writing as well from the insurance provider. Headway will give you that information up front, which is kind of nice. If you've got all of that, then you bill it for the session. And so Ryan and Ryan's spouse and I are meeting, and Ryan's the identified patient, and we do a diagnostic and we do the CPT code, right? And Ryan and his spouse and I meet for 60 minutes, and I bill that insurance, and then I get reimbursed whatever the contract rate is that I signed up for based on those CPT codes. Okay. Now, what's the magic question? How much is it? So for Blue Cross Blue Shield, if you don't go through Headway, the last I checked, and you'll need to check this, because the last I checked, for individuals, it was $87.11. And I'm going to just give you the 60-minute rates, not the 45. There's 45 and there's 30. I'm going to just talk about 60 minutes. For couples, it's actually about $76. So it's less for couples and families than it is for individuals. United is a little bit more. It's 116 or so for an individual and around 100 for couples. Now, why would they charge less for more people in the room? Because they don't care about that. They don't care about any of those things. That's not important. I think Aetna and Cigna are a little bit less. Aetna might Aetna might be a little bit more now, but they used to be the low. Aetna used to be the lowest. They've come up a little bit now. But you would need to double check those, and you would know that. You would know. So all the things I'm telling you right now, you'll know through the contract before you sign it. They'll give you how much you would get reimbursed. So why am I talking about this? Well, I charge $175 for my rate. So if I charge insurance and I get 75, what's that mean? I got to see 2 clients or 3 for every one self-pay. Does that make sense? Oh, and then you got to pay tax on that too, right? I mean, this is so there's lots of things to think about. Most of this information you'll know going in, because there's a contract and it'll tell you, how much things are, and things like that. Um, I think I think one of the things that's happening right now, like things like companies like Headway, are very interesting, because I use them because my rate that I get reimbursed is a little bit higher through them. I'm not sure how they do it, but they do that somehow. Um, but having said all that, you'll know your rate. Now, you probably would be able to build your practice. Like when I was self-pay and then I just went over to um, insurance and self-pay, I got big pretty quick. Pretty, I was, I almost doubled my, I mean, almost doubled my um, clients per week, roughly. So you can do very well going the insurance route because once you sign that contract and you go on the panel, you'll get clients pretty quick. Now, sometimes people ask, and I've had clients talk about this some, but not a lot. Sometimes people ask, okay, if my rate's 175 and I'm only getting 100 back, can I charge my client that 75? That's actually called insurance fraud. You cannot do that. That's not appropriate. And they'll tell you on all the claims, it'll say like this is your billed rate or contract rate. You cannot charge a client over this rate. Like on the claim, the EOB explanation of benefits that you get, you'll see that there too as a provider. Why do I know that? Because I've heard people that have done that before, and that's illegal. It's actually very bad. I worked in a practice in Lubbock. This is a long time ago, 2012, I think, 2011. And the guy that I was working with found out that his administrative assistant who did some billing for him was skimming that money doing that, like to the tune of like 70 or 80 grand over time and didn't know, and then found out, like kind of figured out something was wrong, and because this person had worked with him for a long time, he just didn't suspect it, and then he kind of had an idea, so he went to the police, and they basically did a sting, basically, and caught this person doing this, but he had to come up with a way to kind of repay, which he didn't repay the person that did this. It was a big mess. So, um, but it's very, you know, it's pretty black and white what you get paid and what you don't. I mean, it's not hard to know going in. Um, and it doesn't change that much. Now you can, and now there's people that will advertise this on like social media where they'll go to bat for you and try to negotiate higher rates for you. Well, they charge a fee too to do that, but you can go to the insurance provider and ask for more, a bump in reimbursement rate. You can do that. They do allow that, and then they decide, if they want to do that or not. Monica's asking a question. Monica, just jump on and ask. That's fine.
Yeah, my question is on the relational codes. So, because you had said none of the relational codes, like adjustment disorder, I assume, is not reimbursed. But is there any instance where a couples or family session would be reimbursed? Like
The
if the IP has depression and that's the code?
So, so the adjustment disorder is reimbursed.
Oh, okay.
Let me look. So I think they're called Z codes now. They used to be called V codes. Now they're called Z codes. And then the next DSM, be called something Y codes. I don't know. So the V's and Z's, they don't get reimbursed. So if you go to your DSM and most of those are in the back, like if you look in the back of your DSM, you'll see several different Z codes. Um, it's funny because like V6110, relationship distress with spouse or intimate partner, which is really what we're treating. That's not reimbursable. Like no
Got
V or Z
it.
code is reimbursable.
Okay.
To my knowledge, I've never seen it happen. I tried one time just for the heck of it. It didn't work, um, but most of those are also more like they're just not recognized as like medical issues. I'm assuming that's
Mm-hmm.
all I can think of. I don't really I just know that they're not. So I'll just say this: there's a debate in the LMFT world if you should take insurance or not because you're really treating the relationship. So it's kind of counterintuitive to have an identified patient when you're treating the relationship. So that is
Mm-hmm.
debated too.
Okay.
that's a hotly debated thing. Um, I think I'm super honest. Like I'm the breadwinner, so I'm like, well, I mean that was the way I could see clients and see couples
Hmm.
but I'm very upfront with my clients, like, hey, here's the thing. Now, I will say this, 90% of the people that you work with come to therapy with a diagnosis of some kind. That's not uncommon at all.
Hmm.
Especially now. I don't have any clients that I can think of, even with couples that I don't have very many couples now, but I can't think of any couples that I work with where at least one of them has like something diagnosed already. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Like even could like if one person has
Mhm.
ADHD, is that
Same
something
thing.
that,
Yep. Yep.
oh,
Because
okay.
ADHD has
Okay.
a massive impact on
Yeah.
all parts of your life. So that's 100%. And actually, there's some new research studies that have being done right now when, let's say, one partner has ADHD and how does it affect the marriage, the relationship. So there's some new research coming out about that, which is really good. I think that's awesome that that's happening. So yes,
Mhm.
ADHD. So any of the learning disorders, right? So any of the mental health, like the mood disorders, any of did I say learning disorders, the neurological disorders, those are all
Mhm.
reimbursable. And if you have
Got it.
if you have an individual, 9 times out of 10, they're coming to probably a depression or anxiety or something like that. However, every once in a while, you'll get people that maybe they're actually, I don't, they're probably not diagnosable because they don't meet their criteria. What I do is I'm very upfront about that and say, I really can't diagnose anyone. This is not really reimbursable by insurance. And I'll tell them that up front. Most of the time they still come,
Mm-hmm.
but that's their choice then, right? That's on them to decide. Does that
Got
all
it.
make sense? I'm trying to be as clear as I can because this can be a little confusing, but does that make sense what I'm saying? I hope.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, yeah. Let's see, I think everybody, to my knowledge, is insurance providers, everyone's using the ICD-10 coding now, which is the international coding. Um, I think everybody's doing that now. I work with a company that's actually doing that too. Um, you would have gone through, you would have gone through a lot of this code, like the actual disorders. If you look at your DSM, they all have a code. You don't really necessarily recognize it until you start using it. But everything you see on the DSM has a code, and that's the code you would use as a diagnostic, which is the same if you go to the doctor, right? They have a diagnostic code. That's what they use. And the same thing is true for them. Like only certain things are reimbursable for them as well. Okay. Is there any? Let me take a step back. Any questions about this? Any other questions about this?
I was confused though on that last statement you said because the doctor's office, if they are only allowed to collect so much, they charge us the difference. How are they
Well,
allowed to do that and we're not?
they should not charge you the difference.
Okay. And I need to be fighting that more. Like for instance, I went to get x-rays done.
Mhm.
They run my insurance, they say this is the amount of your copay. And then 2 months later I get an additional bill.
So, okay. So, two things. This is all a rabbit trail side note, but two things. The first thing is there is what's called co-insurance, and that could be what part of that is potentially. That's in addition to your copay, and that's part of your policy. The second thing is if you call them, they're going to tell you to call your provider. My suggestion would be call your insurance provider and ask them. Now, you can from your provider get an itemized bill. They'll give you like what all the charges are, right? And then why something costs X amount or whatever it is. So you can get that from them. Um, Uh, so that's what I would do is you can get that itemized bill, but I'd talk to your insurance provider too. You could have a co-insurance, and if you and sometimes if you haven't met your deductible, you will pay a little bit extra till you meet the deductible. That happens too, which is the new term. Okay, so we've got deductible, which everyone kind of knows about. We got copay, which everyone kind of knows about. Now we got co-insurance, which is different than the other two, but still costs us money that helps us reach our deductible. And you would know that from your policy. You should know. Everyone still has maximums, right? Minimums and maximums. We still have that. This co-insurance is a little newish, like new, like the last 10 years. And I tell my clients, you probably need to check on that too. For example, like the beginning of the year, um, and your insurance provider will send you these nice emails too. Hey, at the beginning of the year, everything resets. So deductibles reset. So, hey, make sure people know that if they have to meet their deductible before their insurance kicks in, they might be paying you more, like, you know, $100 more, or whatever it is. They might be paying more because they need to meet their deductible, which usually means their co-insurance is covering some of that, and that would be a little bit more. Once you hit your maximum, usually that it's just the copay. That's still true, but that's the question I would have for your insurance provider.
Yeah, it just seems like that would be also kind of a fraud if they're double checking before you get the service with the exact code and then
Well,
suddenly
but they
it's
don't, but they can't, but they can only do so much. They can only
yeah.
check so much. That's why I'm saying get the specific bill, like get the
Okay. And
because
but
how
it's
much
still, even though it's similar with the mental health, it's not exactly the same
it's sim- it's
as
it's
the
it's
medical.
it's technically all the same through insurance, but the coding is different,
Okay.
right? You just have different coding. Like getting an X-ray could have two or three different codes versus if you meet for a session, it's going to have one code.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So I know just as much now. Now I've exhausted my information about how insurance works in terms of like deductible, co-payment, co-insurance. Like I know enough to be dangerous. So, um, and it's always changing too. We used to not be able to charge insurance for virtual visits. After COVID, we can, but technically, insurance companies haven't made that codified it, which means they haven't made it permanent. They still accept it and it's still happening, but they haven't made it permanent. I think they're waiting on some states to make that mandatory. Texas is one of those that's trying to make that mandatory for insurance providers to make virtual therapy mandatory. Medicare has already changed that. Medicare stopped paying for some virtual visits already. So that's a little disheartening because usually insurance follows Medicare. The way in which we get reimbursements rates is they use the Medicare rate, is kind of what they use in terms of reimbursement. Any other questions? Some of the things I'm talking about are like just mistakes I made, and I'm like, don't make this mistake. Now, having said all that, it's quite possible that by the time you get your full license, if you wait that long and then decide to go on panels, some of this could have changed a little bit. That's super possible. It could be a little nuanced. And so, just in general, you're going to get reimbursed a certain rate, and unless you're charging $85 a session, probably you're going to be reimbursed less than what your self-pay rate is. That's probably going to happen. I've had colleagues that did have gone from self-pay to insurance, and I've had peers that have gone from insurance to self-pay. I've seen both. Um, it's really a decision you have to make. The financial part is definitely part of it for sure. If I had my way, I wouldn't use insurance at all. I'd just self-pay and that's it. That's what I would do. But okay. Any questions about any of those things? Okay. I cannot remember last time we met if we talked about like rate, like how to charge, like how much to charge. Did we talk about that? Because I cannot remember.
I don't think so.
I don't think we did. I think we maybe briefly, like if you're at a play, if you're at a practice right now, they probably have some kind of rate structure, I'm sure, or they would, they usually do. So that if you stay there as an associate, they might have like, hey, here's how much you're gonna charge. That might happen. And that's pretty normal. Most practices set their rates. Some practices let you set your rate. That might happen too. If you're on your own, obviously you would set your rate. So there's two ways to do it. And there's probably variable, like different variants of this too. But the first way is to say, I'm going to do a sliding scale fee structure, which is pretty popular. I worked at two or three practices, excuse me, where that was in place. And that's based on income most of the time. And then let's say I'm just making these numbers up, from zero to $30,000 per year, you would charge X amount, and then from, 31,000 to 50, you charge X or whatever, and on up to 100,000, you charge whatever. That's based on income. That's the way most of the sliding scales work, and it's called sliding because it's based on like how much people can afford basically. But there's usually a cap and a bottom. So there's a minimum. I'm going to make this up. $30 per session, and the cap is 100 just to keep the numbers clean. And then you could charge anything in between there. And that's kind of up to you. And sometimes that's kind of up to uh, sometimes that's up to you to negotiate and but you would negotiate that at the beginning and that rate would be set and that would be part of the paperwork that they would sign. This is the rate that they would pay. um, Let me take a step back for a second. And I apologize if some of this is we've talked about this before, but I just think this is important. So one question I have real quick, how many of you like what's the how long have you been working on this degree? Has anybody been working for like 3 years? Anybody 4 or 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that 3, 4, 5 years, okay, in that 3 or 4 or 5 years, how much have you learned or what have you done? It's hard to say, right? I mean, there's a lot. Do you know more now than when you started?
Yes.
And before you started seeing clients to now, have you learned more? You're learning more skills, you're applying the theory, you're working with people, you're learning how to do certain things, right? You're developing, you're growing. Does that make sense? So basically, what you've done is you've committed to becoming as close to expert in this field as you can. I'm learning different things. I'm reading. I'm synthesizing. I'm processing. I'm applying. And then I'm working with people like face to face. Like I've got people I'm face to face trying to help. Sometimes I'm great. Sometimes I'm not, but I'm learning and growing, right? I mean, this is your life, right? So you're developing this service that you're offering to people that they can take the service or not, right? Like we don't like in other words, we don't go out in the street and pull people into room and go, hey, I'm going to therapize you right now. We don't do that, right? They come to us. Does that make sense? What do they come to us for? This is the question that I'm going to pose, and I'm going to put everybody in groups for a second. We're going to do this for like 10 minutes. I'm going to have you answer two questions. Okay? What do people come to us for? And what do we have to offer? Okay? I really want you to think about it. Because up until now, we haven't been thinking about this very much. It's like, I got to pass, I got to do my class, gotta get my stuff turned in, all this stuff. We're just busy. Why are they coming to us? What are they coming to us for? And what do we have to offer? Don't get humble on me here. I want you to talk about it. Be proud of what you have to offer, okay? And everyone offers something a little different, and that's great, okay? I want you to actually talk about it, though, okay? So we're going to do groups for like 10 minutes. So this is a chance for everyone to put their video on, because I know no one likes to put their video on when we're like this. Do y'all want to do small groups or big? Small? Like 3?
Small.
Yeah, let's do small. Okay, they should be open now. Right. Now everybody can go back and take their video off. Okay, what are people coming? Like, what you guys talk about? Like, why are clients coming?
I was saying from the LMFT perspective, it's usually they come with an identified patient in mind, like scapegoat, and that's usually how the family sessions start. But then to kind of answer the second question, do you kind of tell them about the feedback loops and the systems and how everyone has a part to play?
Yeah. Do they know anything about that before you tell them about it?
So I'm at a facility for kids that have been to like residential, a bunch of PHP programs. So they know the psychoeducation part. Honestly, a lot of the family dynamic stuff is getting the parents to take their teens' mental health seriously and to kind of work on their communication
Right.
to get the buy-in from the kid. But
But do your clients know systems theory?
oh, because of where I work and these kids, by the time they get to my program, have been through so many other programs, they actually know a lot of the psychoeducation.
But do they know systems theory?
Yes.
I know they know
Yes, sorry.
I know they know psychoeducation, but systems theory is very specific.
Yes, because they've been to a lot of like their families as well have been to a lot of the
Yeah,
stuff already.
gotcha. Good. Anybody else?
We discussed just pathways to get from where they're at right now to where they're wanting to be. And then even if they do know where they're trying to get to, like that accountability and support to execute on the plans.
Yeah. Good.
Just a literal time space for them to go and talk about what they want to talk about and work on. That's something that we talked about, was something that we have to offer is just literally that time and space. And then being a person there that's that third party person to
Yeah.
understand and everything like
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we said that we would be non-judgmental, so they get that non-judgmental part for it. And then we talked a little bit about how we kind of bring perspective to it. Even if we're not telling them our perspective, we get them to start thinking about their own perceptions about their situation.
Yeah.
And then one of the ladies brought up we bring our personalities in as well.
Yep. Yep. So let me ask a different question, and this is along the same lines of our discussion. What are people paying for?
Help. Very simply, help.
Yep. Help. Yep. That's right. Yep. What else?
change.
Change. Yeah.
Expertise.
Yeah.
Encouragement.
Yeah.
You're doing the best you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Which technically they could get that from anybody. Encouragement. Not that we don't do that. That's not a bad answer.
I think there's an expertise that comes with it too. You can get encouragement from your wife, but also it's like, man, I paid and I sat down on couch and this guy has letters behind his name and he's encouraging me as well. And that there's a little bit of like a verification there, validation.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do those letters mean? Nobody knows what they mean, but they mean
Correct.
something.
And that's why I said it the way I did. It's like, oh, it's they're like I think somebody said expertise before I chimed in and yeah.
So what we're charging for is what?
Our knowledge and experience.
Our knowledge and experience. Yep. There's not a wrong answer.
Hope.
Hope. Yep. I'm asking these questions because this is how you need to think about why you're charging people what you're charging. Okay. In other words, sometimes it's difficult to go from the clinical mindset to the business mindset and realize we have to hold those together a little bit. And one way to do that would be to say, well, I do have things to offer for sure. Everyone knows that. I have expertise. And everything everyone said is right on. Think about it this way. This is a service that people are paying for. And we need to charge um, the right price for the right service. Now, I'm not trying to be mean or anything. If people will pay $200 to get their hair done, which is important, but maybe not as important as changing their whole life, just keep that in mind, right? If people will pay, um, I play golf and golf is expensive. If I'll pay, in a month, my son and I might go pay a couple $100 to go play golf. What's and then I wouldn't pay the same amount or more to potentially have a positive effect on my relationship with my son. Like that's, you know what I'm saying? Like think about it, just think about it that way. Like we offer a service that they can't get just anywhere. And we offer something that we worked really hard for and we take very seriously. And they're coming because of that, even if they don't know that they are. Does that make sense? So when we start thinking about how much should I charge, most of us charge less than probably we should. Now, having said that, if you live like I've got a couple of people that I have supervised before that lived in like really small towns, like really little towns, and they can't charge $200 for a session. Doesn't make sense. They could charge about 100, like that's what they were charging. That makes sense because of where they live. So you have to be obviously smart about like if I live in a place where it's like people can't pay, X amount, well that makes sense. But if you're, but if you also, if I have a PhD, I've been doing this for almost 15 years. Um, I also have an ability to integrate my faith and clinical together, and I can do that with people. And I've been doing that for almost 30 years. And if you come to me and with that expertise and you say, well, how much do you charge? And I say $50, what do you think?
Not very good at what you do for some reason.
Yeah, that's weird.
All right.
Yeah. If I say I charge $175, that's probably right. Does that make sense? So when we think about it, it's a lot more than just throwing a number out. Now, if you wanted to, you could go on like Psychology Today and look up people in your area and kind of get a guesstimate at what people charge. If that helps you, sometimes that helps you kind of get some numbers in mind. That helps. There's nothing wrong with that. Just keep in mind what you have done, what you are doing, and how much you are growing and learning, and what you've done to get to where you are. That's important too. Not just anybody can go take this. This national exam is hard. When you go take the national exam and pass it, that's a big deal. That's a massive part of your certification process or your professional process, basically, right? That's a big deal. Just keep that in mind. And I'm basically trying to say, don't shortchange yourself. That doesn't help you and it doesn't help your client. It's okay to feel confident in yourself and what you're doing. And it's okay to act that way and talk about it that way. That's okay. Now, can that go too far? Of course it can. Of course. If you're meeting with a client and you tell the client, I can help you with anything you're talking about, don't worry about it. That probably doesn't make sense. But if you're meeting with a client and say, I think I can help, let's see if we can do it this way. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Or I had a client yesterday that came to me with something that I'm just not good at, but I know three people that are, like I've got a pretty good referral. And I said, hey, I don't know if I'm great at this, what you're looking for. Let me give you these three people and help connect you with them. Well, I can do that, you know, because I have news for everyone. We're not going to run out of clients. It's not ever going to happen. This profession for a long time used to be really competitive with itself. And some of it probably comes from the programs because we get competitive with grades and competitive with each other. And that probably starts in high school, right? When we're like trying to beat each other out. And then we get in college and we got to make an A and we got to do better than everyone else. And then we get into the field and we think the same. And that doesn't make sense because really we need to change that and say, well, wait a minute, I'm working with everyone, not against everybody. Like everyone here, when you guys graduate and start working, we're all going to be peers, not like competitors. So if I can't help someone, but one of you can, why would it just make sense for me to say, well, go see this person, right? We for too long have been too competitive with each other. It doesn't make sense. The last time I checked the rates of depression, I feel like it's gone up two or three times, like a factor of three, I think, from before COVID. I mean, we're not going to have problems with clients. It's roughly almost 40% of the population almost that have mental health disorders. That's massive out of 300 something million. That's a lot. And then there's segments of that population that the numbers are higher, right? Like there's niches inside there too, right? That we're not going to have trouble. Does that make like we're there? We got plenty of us around, and that's good. That's a good thing. Actually, there's not enough of us. which leads me to my next quick discussion. In terms of getting your license in like multiple states, you can do that. I think I talked about this a little bit last time. There's a couple of states that are easier than others, like Washington State, I think I mentioned last time, is a fairly easy one to get your license in. There's a couple of other ones. Some high need states right now are like Arizona and California, Pennsylvania, Florida, Illinois. Um, I'm missing one or two, and I'm talking about like high need. Just Washington State. I think I'm missing one, but I can't remember. It's not someone you would think of, like Pennsylvania wouldn't think of, but it's a high need. Anyway, those are states that are pretty high need, and once you have your full license, sometimes there's a stipulation of waiting 2 years. I have a feeling some of that's going to change over the next 3 to 5 years. I think it's going to be a little easier. Right now, they're like in the psychology world. If you're a psychologist, there's about 34 states that are part of a compact where you can be cross-licensed if you're one of those states. The same is happening with social workers right now. I'm hoping that it happens with LPCs and LMFTs. The problem is that we got to get our act together and do that. We're not as organized, I don't think, in those areas, but that might happen too. All that means is you would be able to see people across state lines, which would just kind of open up your practice a little bit, which means that opens up the virtual practice world a little bit. And so that's probably something else for you to think about as you keep moving forward. There's probably some of you that see people virtually now and in person. That's going to be probably a little bit more the norm, but there's still plenty of people that want to be in person. And that's fine too. There's plenty of places you can go um, and find. The very first place I had my practice was at a Regis Office Systems office share space, and I'm telling you, the office was like, I think it was like 6 by 6. It was really small. I had a family of 4 in there one time, and it was like it didn't even make sense. It was like crazy. Um, that was my first space. So it doesn't really matter where you are. The space doesn't matter. If that's where if that's what you want to do, the in-person part. But virtual is definitely something that you definitely is probably going to be. I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to be around for a little while. So, having said all of those things, does that all make sense? Hopefully. Okay. Any questions about that? Any of those things?
I do have a question regarding like if we pursue licensure in one of these other states, right? That you mentioned that are high demand. And I'm just asking because I haven't taken the time to actually go into every board and look at them, at the requirements. So if we got an LPCA in one of those states, would we still be able to do our hours to achieve full licensure while we live in Texas by seeing clients online? Because I'm kind of confused on that. I think I heard somewhere that it was only okay to see clients online as long as the client and the counselor both were in the state where the counselor is licensed. So
So
that's
right,
kind of
yeah,
confusing.
right now you can only see clients that are in a state that you're licensed. If that client is not in that state at the time, you cannot see them. You could be in another state, but they cannot.
Okay, but I can be in Texas seeing clients that live in Washington if I pursue a licensure over there.
If you have a license in Washington, yes.
Okay.
If you don't, you can't. Like if you anyone here right now, if you have your associate license or your full license, let's say, and you're like, I just want to see people in Idaho. Unless you're licensed in Idaho, you can't see them ethically,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So you can only see clients The client has to be, the point of contact has to be in the state that you're licensed.
Okay. Is that like a post-COVID regulation, or is that something that's here to stay? Like, is that, prone to change if and when all the COVID things go backwards, or?
That's because every state has their own rules, and that is one rule that every state has. So every licensure, LPC and LMFT in this case, every state has their own rules. Some of them are the same, but a lot of them are different. So you have to abide by the state rules that you're getting licensed in. That's the kicker of it. That's why it's right now it's a little bit of a process to be licensed in multiple states. If you have your full license and you've been licensed for a couple of years, it's much easier.
Okay. You got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other questions about that or any of the things? Cool. All right. Now, any questions about anything class related?
Yeah.
Amanda, you
I
can.
have a question. I have a question about, and I think this was asked last week, and I just wanted to clarify the practicum form that we send for licensure needs to be signed not by the practicum supervisor, but by Amberton,
Correct.
because it says supervisor or school, and you're saying we don't need two signatures, just send it to Amberton and they sign it and send it back to us.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I'm going to talk about that specifically the very last class because I'm not sure. First of all, the wording on the form is confusing to me. The reason why we have to get the school to sign it is because most people do more than one practicum. So it means you have more than one supervisor, which means you have more than one site a lot of the time. So instead of getting all these sites to sign it, we sign it saying you've done your practicum. No matter if you had one site or three sites, we verify that you've done your practicum work at all of these sites, and we say yes, you're finished. It shouldn't have anything on there to me that says anything about the supervisor. It should just say school. If it just said school, that would really help a lot, but it doesn't, and that's why it's confusing. And everything I just said, in my experience, when you guys get ready to do your insurance, your packet, you're going to forget. And then you're going to email us again, which that happens. It happens all the time because the form's confusing to me. It's just confusing. So you can't send that form either until after you've graduated and your degree is conferred and you have a transcript. So that means on May 22nd is graduation. I send my grades in like the Friday after. I think the 23rd, I usually send them in. So the grades will go in usually by Monday. They do it over the weekend, but usually by Monday. So usually that next week, like the week of Memorial Day, you should be able to get your transcript sometime that week. That's about how long it takes for it to generate in the system. So at that point, if you've got your application kind of ready, all you need to do is send that form. You send it to Gina. She gets it signed and she sends it right back to you. I mean, it's really quick. It doesn't take long at all. She just kind of jumps online and makes sure that you met all the requirements is basically what she does. I'm going to talk about all this stuff again the very last class too, just by way of information. Yeah, but it's a great question, and I wish the form was different, but I think it's confusing too, to be honest with you. Does that make sense, Amanda? Hopefully, that's probably way more of an answer than you wanted.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Good. Good.
And then this question may have already been answered, but how do we apply for graduating this year? Like, I don't want to do the ceremony part, but I want to do the graduation part.
Well, you can do that online anytime.
Online. Which format though? Like I know it's not Moodle. Is it
No, I
under?
think you just go to the Amerton website and you can put it in the search. There's an actual link there.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't know how different the process was because I got my school counseling master's from you guys, but that was many years ago and I don't remember it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably different now. It's all most everything's online now, so yeah, it shouldn't be too difficult. Yeah, if you wanted to
The
walk,
last time I had to go in person and fill out paperwork
yeah,
and
yeah,
okay.
yeah. If you wanted to walk this time, it's too late now for sure. I mean, they do all that stuff like long before. Is anybody going to walk? I'm just curious. Ryan is. Ryan's the only one.
Well, I missed the deadline for the regalia, so I got to drive to a store to get it. But
Oh yeah,
but beyond that, I think I've done everything right.
awesome.
Have two more questions.
Yeah.
Um, okay, one really quick thing for the lady that just asked. If you go to the Amberton website, I think it's under forms and publications that you do the application for graduation. And then you complete it, you sign it, it needs to be a physical signature, you scan it and send it. The email where to send it is right there. Okay, and the questions, one of the questions is if we already have enough hours as of today for our total number of hours, should we just complete the forms to send to you, for practicum 2 with the hours and everything, with the hours we have now and just call it good? Or because there's one side form that has the total, right? So if I give it to my supervisor Monday, so that she's got a couple of weeks to work through it, then all those 2 weeks I'm still doing 15 hours a week, I'm still accumulating hours. Does it matter how many hours if I already have enough to just do it with what I got now, just to kind of check the box and get it done?
No, it doesn't matter. Because Karina, you're doing LPC, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. If you're doing LMFT, I'd say keep going because you can count up to 400 of those hours towards
Mm-hmm.
your associate. But if you've got 300 now with the 100 direct, then you're already done. You can keep going if you want, but you're already done. And if you're done now, this is a good question. If you're done now, I would start getting those supervisions signatures now. Because
Okay.
sometimes, especially during the summer, supervisors leave. Sometimes it's hard to get signatures this time of year. So that's probably smart to go ahead and do that for sure. But you can keep seeing clients if you want.
Yeah, I still gotta keep seeing them. I'm not gonna just drop on them. But
Right.
now my second question has to do with when we change sites. It's like
Mhm.
an ethics question. For one side, you have the legal side of it, right? Of looking at your contract and see if you do have a non-compete and how far away you gotta be from the original site and whatnot. Now, from the ethical side, if you have a client or more that do not want to stay with the current practice and they want to follow you where you're going, and you tell them, you explain to them, okay, you are not legally my client, you come to this practice for service, I am just a provider within the practice, you're not my client, although you see me, you are their client. And they insist that they go like, well, I got your number, I can find you on Facebook, I can find you on socials, and then can you see me if I seek you out a different route than, like I don't like the person they put next, or I just don't want to change because I already been talking to you for 5 months, I want to just stay with you.
Mhm.
What do you do?
Well, I would talk to your site about that. You need to talk to your supervisor about anything like that because that's part of their site. That's probably part of their oversight. My assumption would be. What I would also say is, and this is actually might happen, it's happened to me. If any client or former client contacts you like on Messenger, on Facebook, or some DM, I'd never reply back. that's not appropriate. That's not an appropriate way to communicate with people. You can't, any client currently that you have, any of you have, or formerly that you've had, if you end up going somewhere different, 6 months from now and they contact you, that's their choice. Clients have a choice of where they want to go. In terms of the question you're asking specifically, you need to talk to your site about that because there's probably some guidance that they have. I'm sure that this happens and you need to follow whatever their procedures are for that site. That's the short answer. The long answer is your client obviously can the clients always have a choice of what they do or don't do. That's up to them. But always go through your site first. Always.
Yeah.
So
I did inquire with my site, and there's 3 clients that I have in this position right now. There's one that just said, if I'm not going to see you, I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to do it anymore. And then I have 2 other ones. And I spoke to my supervisor, to the owner of the practice where I'm doing my practicum, and she told me that she said, well, we'll see how many of those clients, how many clients you have once you talk to all of them. And then maybe you come and see those clients and we pay you for those clients, right? Now, that's not really very helpful to me because I'm not going to drive a whole hour each way to go see 3 clients that may or not show up. Pay the pennies on the dollar for each of those 3 clients. By the time I pay gas and toll, it's really not worth my while to go all the way over there. I'm gonna be just frank, bold.
yeah, you can
don't waste my time to be paid.
You have all you guys have a choice about what you do or don't do. That's up to you. And your clients have choices. If your clients decide, if your client that said, if you leave and I can't see you, I'm stopping, that's up to them. Clients have their own choice. If your client wants to search you out, they can. No one can stop them from doing that. What I'm saying is just make sure you're doing all the right things with your site. That's all. Once you've made sure you've done all the right things with your site, and this is true for everybody, once you've made sure you followed whatever the regulations followed your contract with your site, then that the rest is not really up to you. The rest is up to your clients. Your clients can choose to do whatever they want. But I'm not going to say, hey, do this because I'm not at your site. So I'm always going to say, hey, first talk to your site. That's the first place that you go. Once your site says this is what we'll do or whatever, if you say, well, I'm probably not going to come back here, you just need to let them know that too. Your clients can choose whatever they want. Clients basically have choices like they can stay, they can find someone else, or they can stop. That's kind of how,
Yeah,
but that's,
no, I'm going to present my clients with the options I'm presenting to them is, look, your care can be transferred to the next intern that's going to come and take my place. Or if you don't want the changes, you can ask for a LPCA to take over your care, all within the same practice. And, I'm following all those rules.
Then you're doing fine. That's all you got to do.
What I'm saying is I go and I open shop 10 miles down the street, I don't know, in August, right? By the time I do my paperwork and my license comes and everything else, I open a little corner shop with, I don't know, my church. And, John Smith comes knocking on the door and say, hey, I'm glad I found you. I would like to start they take a break meanwhile, because they already told me they're going to take a summer break anyways. And they come back to me in August and say, hey, I want to do counseling. I guess that's the question.
That's not really a question, right?
Well,
this is probably going to happen. So what would everybody else do in that situation?
As long as she's documented that she followed the policy of the site that she's at, the site that she's leaving and her cannot control what the clients do.
You have no control over what the clients do.
So I would just document with the site what you've actually told people. And if they come and start therapy with you later, they come and start therapy with you.
Yeah. I am not going to give you guys like advice on doing XYZ.
Mhm.
I'm not going to do that because I'm not at your site. I totally understand what you're asking.
Mhm.
I think it's a totally logical question. I think how you're thinking about it sounds right to me.
Yeah. See, I've talked to the clients, and now I'm gonna follow up. Over the weekend, I'm gonna type up an email, and I'm gonna follow up with them with an email saying, as we discussed in your last session, I will be leaving on such and such days. Here's
Yep.
the options for who
Yep.
can, see you next.
Yeah.
Call the front office desk at this
Yeah.
number, or then here,
Yeah.
yada yada. Good luck in your life, kind of thing.
That's perfect. Great.
Um,
I think
and
that's good.
kind of let it be for now.
Everything's up to them. Any client can do whatever they want anytime anyway.
Yeah, but then when they come knocking on my door, then it's up to me to say, well, I cannot see you because you were a client of mine 3 months ago at
Which you
XY.
can't which you can say. Absolutely.
They
You
can
can
take them on.
you can say
Uh-huh.
that. Yes. That's right. I'm not going to answer questions about y'all's sites because these things in the sites have gotten kind of sticky sometimes. And I just want to make sure, as long as you're
Mhm.
following with your site, like I said, whatever y'all's clients decide to do is fine. And if you decide to see them, that's fine too, or not. It's really up to you. Now, especially if, like I said, if there's like, a year goes by or 6 months go by and you're at a different place, and that's totally different too, right? There's not really it just depends on what you sign, the contract that you sign. It depends on what the site says, and it depends on what they do. And every site has different rules. It sounds to me like you've followed everything correctly. I mean, based on what you're saying, I don't think you've done anything that's inappropriate or unethical. Sounds like you've done the right steps, I would say. I don't think you've done anything wrong. You just have to follow what your site says. That's a major thing. It's a big, and that's true for wherever you end up going to, like wherever you're getting your full license. So let me jump over to Corinne had her hand up. I'm just seeing these now, and then Ryan, Corinne, if you can jump in.
Yeah, my first question is just a class logistics question. If I'm going to be completing my needed client hours all the way up till May 22nd, is that okay to just submit that right? What time do I have to have this submitted by? Like if that's my last day?
Um, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you for asking that.
Okay. My second question is more of a follow up to this one of these conversations. In your professional world, have you ever or this could be for anybody, but navigating dual relationships, if say you have a client that's also in the profession and you end up in the same organizations or things like that, or say you're teaching a class later that they are attending, how do you navigate that kind of, like, is it on the client? So say I'm the client and my therapist is teaching some course in an organization. Should I avoid taking that course? Should I avoid being part of that organization as the client? Or how do you navigate that kind of thing?
Well, I don't think you have to avoid it. You just talk to them about it and let them know. Um, I mean, you can't work with friends or family, or I mean, the dual relationship part. You just have to have that conversation with them about it. Um, that's really more uh, like if you're a client and your therapist happens to actually teach something or do a seminar, I mean, there's no one intentionally tried to do anything harmful to anybody, but I would just have you just have that conversation with them. Some of that's also probably a little bit of like, do you feel comfortable doing that or not? It's really kind of up to you too. Yeah. I have not run into that very much. I've had tons of like friends and family being like, "Hey, can you work with my so and so?" I mean, that happens, and I say no. But in at church, I've had that where someone at church is like, "Hey, can you work with blah blah blah?" I'm like, "No." That's those are easy. Those are easy to me. Those are easy ones. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it just gets a little muddy sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It gets real muddy depending on where you live. Like if you live in a small area, you're gonna have. I just know this from people I've supervised that have lived in small towns. Like you're just gonna have. It's just hard to avoid. That's hard to avoid. If you're in small communities, it's going to be harder for sure. But see, here's the deal. Confidentiality is key. So even when I lived in Keller, and Keller's a massive place, I did run into clients sometimes, and I never acknowledged them. They can acknowledge me. You can be acknowledged by your client. You can't acknowledge that you're seeing anyone, right? You can't do that. They can acknowledge you all they want. Even in my opening talk with people about confidentiality, hey, no one knows that you're seeing me unless you tell them. Like, I'll never say anything about this. Like, I'll just ignore. If I see someone, I won't even talk to them unless they talk to me. And even then, it's kind of like, hey, how are you doing, kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. Good. Hey, Ryan, what's up?
Really quick, I think these are just nuts and bolts about this class. I want to make sure because I usually get in trouble when I don't ask. Required for the end of this is our supervisor evaluation, our hours log, and then our student evaluation of practicum. Is that correct?
In your reflection paper?
Okay, okay. And all that's due by in 2 weeks. Well, actually the paper was already due, but
Yeah. I mean,
everything's due on the
I
10th.
I like to get everything that Saturday or so the weekend before we're done. I think we meet again on the 17th, right? I think.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
I'd love to have everything by then if we can, but I realize some people you have until that 22nd technically to get
Okay, I was
everything.
just called by the syllabus. I want to make sure I didn't miss it because I've
Yeah.
blown by deadlines recently, and I want to make sure I didn't do that.
No. These like I think I said this in the very first class. This class is a lot less academically like rigid for sure, just because of what everyone's doing.
Right.
Um, I like to get stuff a little ahead of time, so if something comes up that we need to talk about, I just it's just easier than versus you turn it in on Thursday and it's like, oh crap, you didn't do this. Then we're up against that's not good.
So try
So
to have it in by the 17th of May,
that'd
is
be
what you're saying?
that's what I would rather
Okay.
have. If you can't, I understand. Now, if you're an LMFT, you're going on anyway, so turning it in on the 17th shouldn't matter that much. If you're an LPC and you're like at 200, I'm just making this up. You're like 298 hours. That's okay. We can work with that. If you're at 245 hours and you turned it in on Thursday, that's a problem. That's a repeat the class kind of problem. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
That's why I like to get it a little bit early, and that's why hey, if you know you're going to be super short and you already know that, obviously we need to have a conversation about it. I haven't had anybody reach out saying, hey, I'm going to be super short. Now, the LMFT world, the LMFT folks, you're going to be a little short now because you have a whole nother, basically, you've got 2 weeks of the break and then a whole nother 10 weeks plus the last 4 weeks here, right? So you got 16 weeks to get everything in. So does that make sense, Ryan? Does that answer your question?
Well, that helps. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I didn't miss the date. The hours log, that could be a spreadsheet that the situation with my supervisor is not necessarily what you guys provided.
No. Yeah, spreadsheets are fine. I just want
Okay.
every hour you've done from the time you
Right.
started. That's the key. Yeah.
And that goes back to December when we started
Yes.
all of this. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Whenever you first started seeing clients, whenever that first time was, all the way through. And don't
Okay.
forget your 80 hours of class time for the non-direct, like you get 40 hours for Prac 1 and 40 hours for Prac 2. Don't forget those hours either. And
Oh,
you
I
just
won't.
put, yeah, you just put that in there.
Okay, so we
It,
could just have them separate on another page.
I mean, if it was me, I would have one. I would just do it
I
all
have
together.
I have two sites,
That's
so
fine. That's
I'm
fine.
gonna have them sign off on their own
Mhm.
hours
Yeah,
on
That's
two
that's
fine.
not
separate
bad.
pages.
That's fine.
But I'll ask if I can include the 80 hours with the one lady,
Yeah,
and
I
she'll
would
probably
love.
send that.
I'd love to see a total. If you guys could total it for me, that's awesome.
Oh, yes. So
I don't
I'll
want
send
to. I don't want to go back and dig. Love for you
that
to
makes
total.
sense.
Yeah.
I will have them sign off on their own sheets, and then I'll print the one that has everything together with the total
Yes.
hours.
That's perfect.
Okay.
That's perfect. That's
Excellent.
perfect. And you can turn all those things in. Like if you have a spreadsheet or whatever, you can do it all. That's fine. That's no problem.
I do
Yeah.
have a
Um,
question on
that's
hours. In pre-practicum, Dr. Johnson let us start accruing non-direct hours if we had our site picked out.
Awesome.
You're still good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. However you got to get hours, you get them. Yeah, that's
Um,
smart.
one more question on the reflection paper.
Uh-huh.
Uh, the reflection paper, as long as we answer the questions, does it matter if it's like a couple pages long, which has highlights, or are you looking for like a certain length, or is it like more detail,
Just
more level of
just a
detail?
just a page. Yeah, just a page. Doesn't have to be long. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
oh,
that's just a quick reflection on your practicum experiences. Yeah, you don't have to go into a lot of detail there.
oh, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a clarifying question about the practicum documentation needed for the board.
Uh-huh.
On the form, it says one form per site, but if Amberton is signing off on them, do you just consolidate it and use your primary site, or is it still per site and it's just signed by Gina? Does that make
All right.
sense?
Let's just go through this thing. Hang on. You guys bear with me for a second.
Where is this form so I can be looking at it while y'all are talking about it?
I found it on the BHEC website under like forms, need required documentation for application.
Perfect. Thank you.
Right here. Practicum documentation form.
Yes.
Looks like this. um, this wording down here is very confusing. You don't need multiple forms for multiple sites because you're not getting your site to sign the form. The school official is going to sign the form. That's going to be Dr. Paul Burton. You're going to fill this full form out.
We're still
Um,
seeing the previous screen. We're not seeing the form.
oh, sorry. Sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize for that.
It happens to me all the time.
You see the form?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You'll only do one form. I wish they would just take this practicum crap out right here. Excuse my language, because it's very confusing. You're going to have a school official, which is Dr. Burton, sign it. You cannot fill this form and send it to Gina until you've graduated and have your transcript. You can fill it out ahead of time. You'll fill it out. Um, uh, you will, if you have, you can just put your main site here, which I think is what the original question was. You just put your main site here. That's fine. Um, and then when you get here, I lost it. This line right here, number one, clock hours of client direct client counseling. We have had people in the past that put 80 hours there for some reason, thinking that's the 40 hours and 40 hours from the class. That doesn't, please don't do that, because if you put 80 hours here, Gina's not checking this, and then you send it to the board, what are they going to do? They're going to send it back and say you can't get your license. This should say 100 or more. Like all of you that have graduated have got the 100 direct hours, correct? You know what I'm saying? Like that's then your number of clock hours indirect, that could be 200, that could be, I mean, that could be a lot. You could have a lot of indirect hours. And then your total, right? So the total should be 300 at least. A lot of times it might be more, but make sure you check that, and then you'll kind of go through all of this. You will um, sign right here. You send this to us, we'll get this signed, and she'll send it right back to you.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
And once you do that, once you have this is just part of the form, part of the application process. Hang on a second. Which is you can find, there we go, which you can find here. So when you go on the BHEC site, you look at professional counselors, it'll say applying for a license. You say, I'm an associate, and it just scrolls down. You'll just do these things. And like the exams listed here, like everything is listed there. You actually do some of these things online too. Like there's an online system. You just follow the instructions here. The same is true for marriage and family therapy. It basically looks the same, except they do this whole checklist of things that which you won't see now because now it's off my screen, but you'll basically get a checklist of things. So I mean, this BHEC site is definitely the site you want to go to just to, like I said, get familiar with it. This is actually a brand new format as of this, like the last 2 or 3 months. And so you can kind of go through here and there's all kinds of different things you can look at here. It's really, actually, they've done a good job of consolidating everything into one place. So if you haven't gone on here yet, you definitely should. I'll put this in the chat. Definitely should go on there if you haven't already. We're going to go over this too again next class. Same thing. Corinne, I think you were asking a question.
Yeah, on that form, the line right above where there was the practicum / school thing, the line right above said supervisor's title or name, title, and signature. That's your LPCS person, right? Is that what's going in that? The one that's going to be supervising your LPCA license?
I'm sorry, I don't have the form now. I'm thinking you're talking about, this is all for your practicum. So this would be your practicum, like at the site you were at. I just don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get it to come back up. Hang on a second. Okay. Like at your setting, like if you were at a private practice, whoever that supervisor was, you're just printing their name and their credentials.
And
But
ask
you're,
for a signature, I think, too.
Yeah.
Not in the same line as the school, a different line. And I just want to make sure I'm knowing who that's supposed to be.
Okay, hang on a second. So this line is a print line, right, where you're just writing, and this is a signature where the
But what
school
about that line
signs.
in between? The supervisor credentials title.
That's just the title. Yeah.
But that supervisor is the practicum supervisor or the LPC?
This is your practicum documentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. So that's why this is so confusing. It's very confusing form. And honestly, this is why I wait till the very last class, because it's going to be, it happens every, I wish it wasn't so confusing, because even when some of you are not going to get your license right away, and then you're going to get to this form to go, what the crap? What just happened? It's just confusing. uh, the way that they word everything. This is basically this is basically a form telling the state that you completed all your practicum hours. Because in essence, you could just list all of those things out, right? And list out XYZ hours, and John Doe was my supervisor. But if you don't get that signed by the school, then you could be making all of that up. But we have already seen your hours, which is why I want you to give me the total, right? We've already seen your hours, and I can say, yeah, everybody's completed them. You're good. You know, does that make sense? Hopefully. Okay. I apologize if I'm a little frustrated with this. I'm not frustrated with you guys. I'm frustrated with the way in which these things are done. It's just frustrating to me because all these questions I've heard like 100 times now, and I know it's not because you don't know anything. It's because of the way the form is written. It's really frustrating. Um, so I'm not really frustrated with you. I'm really frustrated with this thing. Okay. I think we I think we can I think we can stop. I think we're good. I'm going to stop there. The next time we meet, I think it's the 17th. We're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to go over some of the stuff we just did now. I'm going to go over some stuff there too, that last class. And then I do a kind of a milestone blessing with everybody with this last class. So we're going to do that too. That takes about 45 minutes or so. We'll do that as well. And for some of you, the majority of you, that'll be your last class, which is pretty exciting. And then some of you are going further, and that's fine too. Uh, but we'll meet on the 17th. And obviously, if you have questions between now and then, let me know. But otherwise, go have a great weekend and take a nap, or I don't know, do laundry, or I don't know, see clients. Go do something. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.